Hello everyone, welcome back to Trek-A-Day. Today I wanted to give my final thoughts on Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, especially for someone who missed some of those individual episode reviews that I was doing. Overall, I thought Season 2 was a big step up in quality from the already surprisingly good Season 1. I was really shocked with how good the writing was, in particular, in Season 2, and how it managed to capture that surprisingly elusive in the modern era of Trek feeling of really being Star Trek. Just there's this almost undefinable, you can do entire videos I've talked about in the past trying to really pin down like what does it mean to be Star Trek even when there's so much variation, which is always a good thing. Like why does something so incredibly different like Deep Space Nine still feel very genuinely Trek in a world of TNG and TOS and Voyager? What is that thing? And it's hard to define, but Star Trek Prodigy Season 2 really nailed it. I think even better than the first season. And a lot of where that comes from is the brilliant balancing act of being a sort of semi-sequel to a lot of Star Trek Voyager, as well as being a completely brand new adventure, and playing to both those crowds, kids who maybe Prodigy is their first introduction to Star Trek and they might not know these legacy characters really, or people who watched Star Trek Voyager before, especially during its initial run, and grew up loving those characters. Neither side, I feel like, would ever be felt like in the dark or left out of any of the storylines. Everything was woven in a way that carefully made everything work for both of those crowds, which is difficult to do, while also having the other balancing job that Season 1 also did really well with trying to be something that is still very much a children's show, but not being limited by that fact. That's a hard thing to do, not dumbing things down, being appropriate to that younger audience and intriguing to them, but not dumbing things down so an adult audience will enjoy it as well. It worked on both levels. I feel like it transcended the notion of being a child-friendly TV show, like what comes to mind with that phrasing, and becomes a genuine all-ages, pleasing television series with a true heart of Star Trek, beating stronger than most modern Trek. And it was really surprising to me how good that aspect of the show truly was. And it had a good balance of being a show that had really one season-long main story arc, but it had a lot of bits and pieces in there that had enough of an episodic feel to really kind of get that perfect mix of the two and get enough of the science and exploration elements in there along with a lot of the action and the constant presence of this impending world-ending threat that did not kind of overrun or overtake any of the storylines with the individual characters, especially with the more the younger audience, the younger crowd, the crew of the Protostar starting to really come into their own more here, as they are a little more defined through their journey. And it ends on a note that has me really hoping for a third season, because Season 1 introduces the premise, did a great job of being this thing that would introduce a younger audience to Star Trek and also become a fun adventure for adults. Season 2 improved every one of those elements. I loved everything they did, being respectful to characters like Janeway and Chakotay and really giving them a great new chapter in their storyline. And the show really seems to have come into its own to an even greater sense, and now is possibly launching into, if we ever get a third season, it's set up to be what it sounds like from what is presented, a true Star Trek, TOS, TNG, kind of Voyager exploration to the forefront. Maybe one overarching goal or something, but something that's not necessarily one season-long story arc as the primary focus, something a little more episodic, and with, again, exploration of the unknown, of what's out there, being sort of the primary catalyst for events. That seems to be where things are going if we get a Season 3, and I think Season 2 And I think season 2 had a satisfying conclusion to its own story that it wove, while also setting up this possibility. So it didn't feel like there were a ton of loose ends, super open-ended. There has to be more, but it did take the chance to wrap up this story, really concluding seasons 1 and 2 together, while opening up the possibility for new adventures. So I think that was done very well, and even characters who could have been utilized in a way that was just sort of a flash in the pan, nostalgic cameo, or just some temporary comedic relief, were instead used well and functioned well within the storylines. But Wesley Crusher, really, I was surprised with how much he was used and how well it actually made sense for that character, and it really gave a more satisfactory exploration of that character than the tiny little tidbit that we got in Star Trek Picard. I feel like, again, Star Trek Prodigy can be written off by a lot of people as being an animated kids show, and that it is that, and you have to understand that going in. But if you don't let that stop you from checking it out, there's some really good Star Trek in that show, particularly as you get into season 2. But to me, I think the weakest part of the show, which is still very strong but is a little more towards the kiddie side, was the first half of season 1. Things got even better in the second half of season 1, and overall it was just a great show. But season 2 really took it up a notch, and it's honestly one of the best and most truly Star Trek feeling seasons of a show that we've had in a long time. I'd love to hear what your impressions were of Star Trek Prodigy Season 2. And if you're new to the channel, please give the video a like and subscribe. I have new Star Trek content of some form literally every single day. Been a huge Star Trek fan my entire life since I was born in the 80s. I love every era of Star Trek and go into everything from collectibles, episode reviews, you name it. So I hope you enjoyed the video and you'll join me for more.